Alexandria Sarah, and this is Lawyer Talk Thursday, and today we are talking about traffic accidents and insurance, and I have the master and expert, Miss Tiffany, with me. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hey guys, Tiffany with Pronto Body Shop, and if you didn't know, I've been licensed as an insurance agent for a few years now. We're gonna say 15 plus, and I also own a body shop. I am older than her, but I'm still just as good looking. No, and so I have a body shop now, and so I can answer all your questions in reference to insurance, accidents, and what should be happening.
Okay, so I threw you guys a softball at first, right? It depends who's at fault, right? If you get the other person's insurance, that doesn't mean necessarily they're gonna cover it. But what you're getting tripped up on is, can a body shop or an insurance company legally put used parts on your car?
Totally. So you have to remember the insurance company's bottom line is what they're looking at. They're looking at the most cost-efficient way to fix the vehicle. So generally, whenever your vehicle's in an auto accident, the insurance company is going to look at it and say, okay, can I find this part used, or can I find it aftermarket, meaning it's a new part, just not manufactured by the manufacturer of your vehicle. So where they put a lot of used parts on is like suspension items, mechanical items. They do a lot of used parts that way, and it's completely legal in Texas to do that, and it's legal in most states to actually do that. So it's not just a Texas thing. Generally where they don't do used parts is they can't do used parts on what's your SRS system, which is your safety restraint system. So seat belts, airbags, control modules, those generally are not used parts, and they won't put them on there. There's nothing legally saying they can't, but that's the general rule that they won't.
Okay, when we say used parts, I mean, like, how used are you talking about?
So generally what happens is, if say you have a 2017 vehicle, a lot of times when your vehicle is manufactured, like maybe 2015 to 2018, the same parts will fit on those vehicles. So they'll go to typically LKQ, which is the largest used parts, not manufacturer, used parts, like salvage yard. And they basically take a part off of a wrecked vehicle that wasn't wrecked. So like if you got rear-ended and say you had an SUV and you have your liftgate damaged and they got a used liftgate, what that means is they found a vehicle like yours that was maybe wrecked in the front, and then they took the good liftgate off of it on the back and then sent it to the shop to basically take everything off of it, repaint it, then take everything off of your vehicle or a liftgate that wasn't damaged and put it on the new one. So, I mean, it's still a part, but I mean, it just depends how comfortable you are with a used part. And you can fight it, but generally, it's not going to be something that the insurance company budge on.
That's good to know. So I guess everybody's wondering, let's say you go out right now, you get in an accident, what are your recommendations for the steps to follow as soon as someone gets in an accident?
So obviously if somebody's injured or something like that, you want to go ahead and call 911 and make sure they're taken care of. But let's say most accidents, you're in an accident, no one's injured. You want to go ahead and move from the side off to the side of the road, so you're not blocking traffic. And my general rule of thumb is, if it was not your fault and the person's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I hit you, I rear-ended you, generally in times past, everybody would just exchange information, like here's my name, here's my number, here's my insurance, and then they would go on their ways. So, but what I recommend now is, if they're saying they're at fault, then go ahead and turn the claim, have them call at the scene of the accident their insurance company if they have an 800 number that's available at that time, which most of them have 24-hour numbers, and then have them turn the claim in right there and get the claim number, because what that does is there's a record of that incident. Because right now what happens is, say I rear-end you and we exchange information, we leave the scene of the accident, you turn the claim in with my insurance company, they're going to say, okay, Miss Sarah, here's your claim number, we'll be in contact with you, and then they're going to contact me. We'll say I refuse to return the insurance company's calls. Say I don't respond to their letters. What they're going to then do is, there's not a police report, and the police don't come out for most incidences anyway. So we can talk all about that. But so they're going to say, okay, well, we can't get a hold of our customer. We don't have a police report. We don't have any witnesses. So we're just going to deny the claim. So even though I clearly was the one at fault, because they can't get a hold of me to verify I was involved in that incident, we're just going to do a straight denial. Then you have to go through your insurance, pay your deductible, let your insurance company fight it out, and you may or may not get your deductible back. Or if you don't have full coverage, then you're sort of SOL, and you're going to have to go through the small claims court, which is costly, and most people aren't going to do that anyway. So general rule of thumb is if the person's saying it was their fault, and if you can get them to turn in a claim right then at the scene of the incident, it is your best bet. My other rule of thumb is if they can't turn it in, or they won't turn it in because, accidents are weird and, people are upset, is then generally if you definitely get a cell phone number and their insurance, and then I generally will text them and be like, hey, I'll turn the claim in and then text them, hey, here's the claim number. I'm glad no one was injured in the accident, if that was that. And if they text you back saying, oh yes, and ask them to go ahead and call their insurance in the text. And if they text you back, that's sort of acknowledgement that they were involved in the incident. And then we can screenshot that and send it to the insurance, because that's sort of like them admitting, almost like liability sort of. And then that will force the insurance company to make a legal decision instead of just a straight denial.
Yeah, and I recommend as well. So Texas is a single party consent state as far as recording goes. And so if you are having this conversation with that person and they're being irate, or maybe that they are admitting fault, you can take that phone out and record that audio and use that as evidence later, because you can testify to the authenticity of the voices. So that's another tip. Remember, for this type of thing and other things, Texas is a single party consent state on recordings. But I do have a follow-up question from one of my followers. So she said she got rear-ended, and she made a claim and her insurance went up even though it wasn't her fault. Why would that happen?
So it depends. You have a lot of factors, and sort of you have to think of insurance sort of like legal stuff or a legal, they make it really hard for only attorneys to read, is really what happens. So if she was involved in an accident and it wasn't her fault and her insurance rates went up, that probably tells me that maybe the other person didn't have insurance, or she went through her insurance, paid her deductible, and that's why her rates went up. So generally your rates will go up is if you're involved in an accident and it was your fault, they'll go up. But if you're involved in an accident and you went through your insurance and paid your deductible, generally your rates will go up until subrogation happens. And subrogation is basically the insurance company going against the other person's insurance to get their money back and your deductible back. Now, once they get their deductible back, and their money back, then they will remove that surcharge off of your insurance.
Do they refund you for the time
No, they don't.
That's ridiculous.
And and also a lot of times what happens is insurance companies use those accidents just as a justification that their rates went up. So even though maybe your rate didn't go up because of the accident and you weren't at fault, they might use that just to be able to be like, oh, well, you had an accident, that's why it went up, instead of just saying, hey, our rates went up.
Yeah, and a word to the wise, if it is your fault or you are cited for unsafe driving or whatever type of ticket that you're getting, usually those get dismissed if you fight them in court, as long as the insurance company has taken care of it and there are not serious injuries. Okay,
Correct.
so if restitution has been paid, which is money paid for medical expenses, or the car has been fixed, normally you're going to get that ticket dismissed. So always fight those as well.
And even if you get the ticket dismissed, that does not change who's liable for the accident. So don't think that will happen either.
Right, you're going to deal with two different things. You're going to deal with the insurance side, and then you're going to deal with the criminal side in that particular case. Okay, so let's talk about two things. Let's talk about uninsured motorist coverage. What is it covered? Why is it a good idea?
Okay, so one, everybody should have uninsured motorists. And just know in other states it's handled a little bit differently. But here in Texas, one, I recommend it if you have full coverage or liability. And typically when you have a policy, if you have 3 vehicles on that policy, you're going to have uninsured motorists on all of them. You can't pick and choose. It is a state dictated coverage. So when it's offered with one insurance company, it's the same coverage with any of the other insurance companies. So generally what happens with uninsured motorists is if somebody hits you and they don't have insurance, they don't have enough insurance, they hit and run, they hit you in a parking lot and don't leave their information, those are going to be considered uninsured motorist claims. And
or
so
they're from Mexico.
or they're from Mexico
and
don't have insurance.
Here.
The same thing.
Yeah.
Well, Mexico insurance sometimes does cover here. And so what that does is it changes your collision deductible. If you have collision from whatever that is, 500 or 1,000 to 250 deductible, it's going to pay for a rental vehicle, and generally it's not going to make your insurance rates go up. Also, if you don't have full coverage on your vehicle and you have uninsured motorist and something like that happens, then your vehicle's still taken care of. So it's really important. I would have to say probably 40 to 50% of people don't have insurance or the correct type of insurance that actually covers if they're involved in an incident. So it's really important.
Okay. And so what other things that clients ask you that are important that you'd like to share with my followers?
One, if you're on a border area like we are, your insurance does not extend over to Mexico unless you have a specific endorsement.
Right.
If you have an accident in Mexico and you don't have insurance, the general rule of thumb is if you cannot pay for the damages at that scene of the accident right then, or you don't have Mexican insurance, they're going to go ahead and impound your car and put you in jail. So if you're crossing the border, you want to make sure you have a Mexican endorsement on there, or you're buying a Mexico liability insurance to cover you when you cross the border. So that's really important, because I want to tell you how many bribes I have to pay to be able to get a vehicle across.
Okay. And by the way, I cannot get you out of jail in Mexico. Here, like, we can talk, but not Mexico.
I can.
Yeah, well, she's got special talent. So, yeah, not my bag. But what other things should we know?
About insurance, one, whenever you have an accident, if it is your fault, it's going to stay on your record for 3 years if it's an accident, and it goes on as of your renewal date. So say your insurance policy renews June 1st and the accident happened March 1st, you're not going to be surcharged for that accident until your June 1st renewal, and then it's going to stay on there for 3 years from that date. Unless it's a DWI, they typically surcharge for 5 years.
Yeah, so that's different. So when we say surcharges, we're talking about the insurance, premium hikes? Right?
Premium hikes. And yeah, the insurance uses the same terminology as surcharges or rate increases. Your rate's going to go up. So it's going to go up for 3 years for an accident that you were at fault at. And note, even if you have an accident that you weren't at fault at and you go through your insurance, like for collision coverage, because maybe you don't have an uninsured motorist, or there's a discrepancy of both parties are saying it was the other person's fault, your insurance is still going to go up for that unless full retribution is obtained from the other insurance company.
Yeah, and I'll make a note of that too. So on the criminal side, same thing with your traffic tickets. If you're convicted of excessive speed, for example, something like that, that's going to stay on your record for 3 years. There's some type of traffic tickets that if you get enough of them, you're going to lose your license. So all of these things are related, but you're probably dealing with both the vehicle side and the criminal ticket side. So make sure if the terminology kind of conflicts or it's similar sounding, that you talk to experts in both areas when you're having those problems. Now, I had another question from a follower that was, if I lend somebody like my son my car and he gets in an accident, is he going to be covered?
So in policies determined per state. So each state is very different. Currently in Texas, we just made some rule changes. We used to have what we called permissive use, named driver policies, and then like a hybrid, and they're sort of phasing those out with the new rules. But generally, if you lend your vehicle to somebody and they have permission to drive it, they will be covered unless they're specifically excluded. Now, if you've signed something to keep, say you have your son in the household and he has a bad driving record and you don't want him on your insurance, and you sign an exclusion form and he drives that vehicle and you exclude him from the policy and he drives that vehicle and wrecks it, now not only is your vehicle not covered, the person he wrecked into, their damages are not covered either. So now you're liable for that. So he's liable and you're liable, and the insurance is free and clear because you signed an exclusion form. So that's really important to know. Did you exclude anybody? Did you not? There are a lot of policies right now that are transitioning out, which are named drivers. So example, say I have a named driver policy and you get in my car because I break my foot right now, and you had to take me to the hospital, and you get in my car and you drive my car and you wreck it.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a possibility. I'm a terrible driver.
And you're not named on my policy. The insurance company isn't going to cover my car or the person I wrecked into. Say you have a permissive use policy, same incident. I break my foot, you get in my car to drive it, you have permission to drive it, you wreck it, coverage for both parties. So it's fine. Or you can fall into a hybrid, which gets really confusing, and it's like a named driver permissive use. Say, same incident, get in the car, my foot's wrecked, you're driving it, and you have a wreck. They're going to look on the hybrid policies and say, okay, Alexandria, you're not on the insurance, but you have the same address as this person that, you know, you were driving their car. Well, you should be on the insurance, and then you're not, so we're not going to cover it because you're not named. But on the opposite end, why it's a hybrid, they can also say, well, you drove the vehicle and you're not named on the policy, but you don't have the same address, so clearly you're not in that household, so we are going to cover it. So it gets really confusing, and so that's why generally you want to talk to an expert whenever you're in an auto accident and there's an issue of maybe, you know, it's not clear who's at fault or if there's a policy that's going to be covered. And let me also point out, insurance companies love just to like wait. So like you want to be on top of them because they'll just wait for you to call. So if you're in an accident, don't expect the other person to turn the claim in and that insurance company be on top of you to be like, hey, I need to fix your car. Hey, I need to fix your car. No, like they don't want to spend the money. So they might call you once, which is legally what they need to do, but then they're not going to be on top of you. If you choose not to, you know, return the call or, you know, let it go, you know, then they're going to let it go because they don't want to have to pay that money out. So you want to be on top of the insurance and the claim because they're going to drag their feet, and sometimes they need a little encouragement.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to her talk about the unauthorized use or non-permissive use or whatever you want to say. I kid you not have parents that kiddo that's not on the policy goes and wrecks the vehicle and then they call it in as a UUMV. Do not call it in as a UUMV because your kiddo is going to get arrested. Now, if he stole the car and it's an unauthorized use or some neighbor stole the car or whatever, but seriously, this happens literally all the time.
And all the time. And on that point, if you do have that incident and the parent reports it as stolen, that is now not permissive use. And whatever happens to that car or whatever they wrecked into, if it was another car or, you know, a stationary object, because you've reported it as stolen, there's not going to be any coverage because now it's theft.
Absolutely. Okay, final thoughts. Anything else you want to tell them, and tell them how they can get in contact with you if they get in a car wreck?
So you can get in contact with me through my Instagram or Facebook. We're at Pronto Body Shop, right down the street from Sarah Law. Just look us up, prontobodyshop.com. I know. We live close by and we work close by because we're crazy like that. You know, I think the biggest thing is, one, don't admit a liability. You know, if there is something that could be questionable, and insurance companies will lead you, just like attorneys will lead you in court to have you say things that you really don't want to say. So say as little as possible to the insurance companies, because I see it all the time. They get people to start telling the story and they're like, are you sure that's what happened? Or couldn't you have helped avoid it? Or like, I know you were at that stop sign stopped and that person rear-ended you, but I mean, couldn't you see them coming so you could have moved forward a little bit so they wouldn't rear-end you? And why they want those leading questions, because if they get you talking and you say something, then they can say, well, I mean, you said on a recorded statement that you did see them coming and possibly you could have moved up a little bit, which could have made the accident not as bad. So, I mean, our customer is only 80% negligent, so we're only going to fix your vehicle 80%.
Yeah, just like anything else. When I tell you, do not talk to the police and admit guilt, do not consent to search, there are similar rules.
Very similar rules. Don't get led. They will do it. They're trained to do it at the call centers because ultimately they're looking at the bottom line of, we want to pay the least amount of money as possible. So my general rule of thumb is, I was at the stop sign, he hit me from behind. That's it. Don't say anything more. Or, you know, I was going through a green light and I got hit. The person came out of nowhere. I don't know. You know, and just say very short, precise statements, don't get led, don't elaborate, because once you start elaborating, that's when it sometimes causes problems.
Absolutely. Well, follow Miss Tiffany Menifee on Instagram and Pronto Body Shop. Check out their Facebook. And if you need absolutely anything, the best thing about Tiff is that she takes care of her clients. She has been a bulldog with an insurance company for me personally, and she's a fantastic friend. So thank you for tuning in. Follow Miss Tiffany, and thank you for being on, girl.
Thank you.